Hi, everyone. So today we are going to talk about professional communication and de-escalation, or how to communicate like a boss. Any job that you're going to ever do where you have any kind of managerial capacity, these skills are going to be really useful for you. So hopefully you'll get a lot out of this, not just for our company, but for any future endeavor that you might have. So first, why is good communication important? Well, it's important in any managerial role to present yourself and your company professionally, and then also to possess some fundamentals of what's called de-escalation, which we're going to talk about more as we move through this training. Being a good communicator is part of being a good manager. We want to make sure that everyone understands what we're trying to tell them and that we show that we understand what's being told to us. And so we're going to discuss some good ways to do that today. De-escalation, the second part of that, is the practice of preventing a conflict from becoming more potent and hopefully coming to a resolution. This can also be called conflict resolution. De-escalation is a really important tool for a manager, but it's not something that just managers do. As we talk about it today, you'll find that you might have some de-escalation skills of your own, and that you have, in fact, de-escalated situations in the past without being a manager. De-escalation is really important, not just for physical altercations, but more importantly in our field, for emotional situations that might be heightened. So in those like emotional and social situations that you might find yourself in, de-escalating basically just means cooling everybody off, so that we can come to a better, more sustainable agreement and understanding between all the parties involved. Some signs of conflict escalation that you can be on the lookout for. Physical tightening, this can be like clenching the fists or clenching the jaw. So if you're in a conversation with someone and you see them start to do any of these things, including that physical tightening, that can be a sign that there might be some kind of conflict escalation about to arise. Another great example is pacing, a sudden change in eye contact. So if it's somebody who commonly, looks you straight in the eye when they talk to you, and all of a sudden they're kind of looking down, looking at the sky, looking around, or vice versa. If it's somebody who doesn't commonly keep eye contact with you, and then all of a sudden they're straight on, right on looking at you the whole conversation, those can both be really good examples of potential conflict escalation. Some other things you might notice are a sudden change in body language or tone, a rooster stance, which is basically when someone stands with their chest forward and their arms back on their hips, looking like a rooster. And then last but not least, any kind of disruptive behaviors. So yelling, bullying, actively disobeying rules or policies, kind of flagrantly. So anything like that. These are not the only signs of conflict escalation, but these are the most common ones. So some conflict de-escalation techniques in general that you'll need to know. First and foremost, the very first thing you want to do in any conflict scenario is you want to calm yourself. If that means you need to step away for a moment and take a deep breath, if that means you need to do, a count to 10, whatever it is that you need to do to calm yourself, that's going to be the first step you want to take, and it's really key to any de-escalation. Some other things to think about. Use low, even, soft tones in your voice. We never want to yell. We never want to raise our voice. We never want to have, any kind of sudden influx in our voice or register. We also don't want to take things personally. When people are in an escalated, heightened state, they can often say things that will be very harmful or feel very harmful to us personally, and we need to try to take that we need to try to not take it personally and kind of let it roll off of our shoulders. Lastly, you need to be aware that you're not blocking the exit from the person in question. So whoever has an escalated or elevated tone or body language, you need to make sure that you're not putting yourself between them and their exit. And I do mean physically. So don't stand between them and the door. Or in any way make them feel caged in. And the reason that we don't want to do that is because even if it's not a physical altercation, standing in the way of someone's exit literally can make them feel emotionally caged in as well. So make sure that you're not blocking those exits from the person who you're trying to de-escalate. Your body language when you're de-escalating is extremely important. Excuse me. Your body language when you're de-escalating is extremely important. You need to always appear calm. You need to maintain limited eye contact at the same level as the other. And what that means is you don't want to be staring them down directly, because that can be seen as really forceful and can actually escalate an emotional situation. You want to let the person know you're listening. So you do want to give some eye contact, but you don't want to just be like burring a hole into them. And you want to keep yourself at the same level as the person who you're de-escalating. So if they're sitting, you need to be sitting. If they're standing, you need to be standing. Encourage others to be seated in that situation. When we sit down, we tend to be a little less agitated as a rule, so that can help a lot. Maintain a neutral facial expression. Don't try to smile or be, overly happy in your facial expression. And, on the converse of that, don't be frowning or furrowing your brow a lot. Just try to keep as neutral a facial expression as possible. Other things, don't shrug your shoulders a lot. Don't point. That can be very threatening. And just in general, don't use overly expressive gestures. Last but not least on this body language is maintain distance between yourself and the other. You want to let them have plenty of room. You want to give them a lot of space so that, again, they don't feel caged in or threatened by you physically. So here's some ways that we can diffuse situations that might be heightened emotionally. So whoever is having that emotionally heightened state, we want to say their name, not overly often, but every once in a while, just to let them know that you're aware of their, you're aware of them, you're aware of their presence, and you're actively listening, which brings me to my second point of active listening. Don't pretend to listen. Really listen. Really engage with what's being said to you and take it in. Because if you don't, the person who is escalated is going to notice that, and it's going to make the situation worse. Empathy is also really important here. So if you can find a way to empathically connect to the person, like if you've had the same or a similar situation that they're going through, let them explain what they're going through to you, and then let them know, mirror that back. I can understand that because I have been through XYZ. And if you haven't been through XYZ, say that. Say, wow, that sounds really hard. And I don't know what that's like, but I appreciate you bringing that to me. And I want to work with you to find a solution to that problem, right? So make sure that you're being realistic. Don't act like you understand something if you don't understand it. But if you do, offer that understanding, because it can help people feel more grounded. Next, clarify and paraphrase. So this is another way to actively listen. When someone tells you something, what you then need to do is stop, take in that information, and then offer them a paraphrase of what they've just said to you, or clarify what they've just said to you. And in doing so, it can really help that person feel listened to and help, like you're actually trying to help them and come to a resolution with them. So for instance, if I spend 5 minutes telling you about how awful my day was, I, woke up late, my alarm didn't go off, I had to get my kids ready for school, and one of them was sick and threw up all over my clothes, so I had to get back in the shower and change. And then when I got outside, I had a flat tire. And then when I got to work, I got sent to the wrong place, so I had to go to another place, and on and on and on and on and on. When I'm done with that, the person who's trying to diffuse the situation might take a deep breath and go, wow, that sounds really hard. It sounds like you had a really, really difficult day. And I don't really, I can't even say that I know what that's like, because that sounds like you had a lot piled onto you all at once. But I think we've all had those, days where we're just struggling and we wake up on the wrong side of the bed and everything seems to be going wrong. But I just want to make sure I'm hearing you, that it sounds like it was all kind of this happenstance stuff that you couldn't really do anything to fix, and you're really just frustrated with that. Is that kind of what's going on? And you see there, in doing so, I was able to offer empathy. I actively listened to the person's problems. I clarified what was actually the issue that the person was going through. And I tried to kind of paraphrase what their difficulty was. So we kind of added all of those things into that one scenario. Another thing that you can do to help diffuse a situation is shift the communication to the future. So in the scenario that I just gave you with the person who had thing after thing after thing go wrong, something you can try to do is shift it to the future. So wow, that sounds really hard. It sounds like you've been going through a lot of stuff. I'm so sorry to hear that. Hopefully the rest of the day can get better. What can I do to help that get better, right? Another thing you can do is try to use we instead of you. So instead of you seem to be having a really hard day, it could be more of a, gosh, we're really struggling here today, aren't we? And that can help people feel like they're part of a team and part of a group instead of kind of in it on their own. The last thing I want you to try to do when diffusing a situation after you've tried all these other tactics is try to get the other person to say yes. And what I mean by that is ask them a question that they have to answer yes to, because in doing that, much like when we're feeling bad and we physically make ourselves smile, it actually makes us feel better, despite if we actually feel better or not. Saying yes can help make us feel more positive about a situation, even if there really hasn't been any positive thing that has happened. So for instance, in the scenario that I'm giving you, if the other has, gone through all the things that are wrong and you've, offered some condolence and asked for clarification, and to paraphrase, I might then offer the other person, do you think there's anything we could do at this next house to make your day better? Right? And they're going to say, yeah, here's this other thing we can do. And if they don't say, yeah, then you say it. You say, no, we can definitely do something. What is it? Like, you don't like to clean bathrooms? Maybe I'll clean the bathrooms at this house, or whatever it is, find a solution. Even if it's a small solution, it will help overall. So the next piece of this training is professional communication in general. Most companies' communication styles can be categorized into two main categories. That's formal and informal. Some companies are extremely formal. If you go work for Merrill Lynch, definitely going to be a more formal company. Our company could best be described as informal. We send each other memes. We, have fun competitions. We talk on Slack in a way that's definitely not formal because we're, using shorthand and things because it's more convenient for our company. But that does not preclude professionalism and clear communication. So what I mean by that is just because we're informal in our nature doesn't mean that we're not professional. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. One of the ways that we exemplify professional communication is by effective and clear communication. The best way to do that is what I call the 3-point system. First of which is come up with your bottom line, also known as your thesis statement. So whenever we're communicating with someone, ultimately, we're communicating with them because we want something from that person, whether it be, I want you to accomplish a task that I'm asking you to do. I want you to be there to listen to a thing that I need you to listen to. I want to make you feel happy with this thing I'm telling you. Whatever it is that we want from the other person, that is why we are communicating. So come up with what you ultimately want from that person. What is your bottom line in that communication? Next thing is break this bottom line down into no more than 3 subpoints. So sometimes you're not even going to do this. If it's, hey, Roxy, I want to have the day off next Friday. That's easy, doesn't need any subpoints, right? But if it's a larger issue that you're trying to ask, make sure you break it down into no more than 3 subpoints, because this will really help the listener understand what they need to do to accomplish your bottom line. Next, tell the listener what you need from them. So if your bottom line doesn't include the I need this thing, make sure that at some point you're going to ask that person what you need. Whether it's I need you to clarify that you heard my request, I need you to go do this exact thing, or I just need you to be here to listen to me. Whatever it is, you need to make sure that the listener is aware. Professionalism and communication. Some points that you need to keep in mind when you're communicating in a professional setting. First and foremost, positivity will get you a long way, and it's really important. But it's also equally as important to be genuine. So don't be overly bubbly and positive if that's not genuinely how you're feeling that day. That doesn't give you carte blanche to be rude if you're feeling like you're having a bad day. But people will know if you're not being genuine in your positivity. So don't try to be overly positive if that's not how you're feeling that day. Next is get to the root of the issue and confront things head on when you're able to do so. Now, keep in mind that job hierarchies do exist for a reason. So if there is something that you have a problem with for someone who's, 3 and 4 rungs up from you, make sure that you're going through the proper channels to address that issue. But when there is a problem and you see a solution, find a way to effectively offer that in a way that is constructive and a way that is respectful of the people who you need to fix that problem for you. Next, talk like a leader and you'll be perceived as one. So what I mean by that is use appropriate punctuation. Pay attention to your spelling. Don't say things in a way that makes you seem like you're not paying attention to how you're representing yourself. It can be really easy, especially with our company being so informal in a way, to not pay attention to those things. But it is important to make yourself and the company that you're representing feel professional. Next, appreciate the autonomy, experience, and needs of others. When you're communicating, always remember that everyone else has a story and they have abilities, maybe that you don't, or maybe that you also possess. And when you're communicating with them, you need to be aware of those items. It can really help you figure out how best to communicate with one another. Next, address people respectfully at all times. So we never want to be worried that somebody feels talked down to or lesser than because of the way they're addressed. So always use people's names, use people's preferred names, and just be aware of how you're addressing one another and that it's a professional in our setting. Concise does not mean curt. And what I mean by that is it's really important to get to your point, but it's also really important not to seem short with each other. So make sure that you're answering in a way that makes people feel valued. Also, acknowledge when you've heard or understood an instruction. So even if an instruction doesn't need your immediate tasking, you need to make sure that the person who gave you the instruction knows that you got that instruction. So for instance, if I say, on Slack, something like, hey, I need everyone to check that you have a paycheck in the next week. Make sure that your paycheck went through, or whatever the ask might be. Even if it's not something you're going to do at that moment, the professional thing to do is to send a message back saying, will do, or absolutely, we'll get on that, right? Let me know that you heard the instruction. Last but not least, ask questions when you don't understand an instruction. So tell me when you've understood it and ask questions when you don't. That way we can make sure that the communication isn't blocked and that you are following through on the things that you're asked to do. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place, George Bernard Shaw said. So make sure that when you're talking to one another, what you're actually trying to convey is what's being conveyed. Now that you've watched this training, go ahead and take the quiz, and then you will be all set. Thanks so much for your time and have a great day.